Welcome in, everybody, to Fantasy Pros. This is Fantasy Football Draft Court. It is me, Joey P, Joe Pisapia, a.k.a. Judge Joey, and I am Judge Joey and Executioner here for our next bit of debates. With me, Pat Fitzmaurice, Andrew Erickson. These are our lawyers. I'm not exactly sure they went to law school or passed the bar exam, but you don't have to do that. I'm pretty sure I've been at a bar or two with Pat Fitzmaurice and Andrew Erickson in my lifetime, but that'll have to do today for these debates. We have 5 players we're going to debate. Pat Fitzmaurice is going to, actually it says Derek Brown, so maybe we should fix that to Pat Fitzmaurice really quick here. There it is. There you go. I don't want to dare insult you, Pat Fitzmaurice, by having you be called Derek Brown on this program today. We are live here on our YouTube channel. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Drop your comments below. Hang out with us. We love when you guys hang out. You're part of the jury today as well. As I was saying, we have 5 debates today, and we are going to go through some players, talk about the players that Pat likes more than Andrew. Fitzy will defend himself. Andrew will be the prosecutor. So without further ado, court is in session. Let the debates begin. Judge Joey is ready to preside. Andrew Erickson, let us continue with our first of many players to discuss today. Alvin Kamara. Now, the New Orleans Saints are not an offensive ecosystem that I want to be invested in. However, I find myself on many of our mock draft shows go ahead and draft Alvin Kamara many times, and I feel like he's just sitting there for me in the 4th and 5th round, and I'm looking for an RB2 or even sometimes just a pairing of running backs because I've gone 3 wide receivers in the first 3 rounds, and I don't like the Saints offense, but damn it, I enjoy a good Alvin Kamara and a good scotch. So let's talk about Alvin Kamara. You look at last season, obviously a very productive running back still, regardless of the shortcomings of the Saints, but those shortcomings could be even shorter in 2025 with Tyler Shuck and Spencer Rattler at QB. So let's talk about Alvin Kamara, who, by the way, just in case you're wondering, was RB10 last year, 950 yards, 6 touchdowns, and 2 receiving touchdowns, as well as 68 receptions for 543 yards. All right, let's take a look, because Andrew Erickson, you have him as RB19, not near the RB1 conversation. Pat has him a bit higher. Andrew Erickson, why so low on Alvin Kamara?
Well, I'm not necessarily sure I'm so low on him. I kind of took him and described the way that you've been drafting him, right? You said, hey, I'm looking for my RB2 that I need to fill this void, because that's what I think Alvin Kamara is. When you look at projections, he projects really well. He's more in that RB13, RB16 range. And admittedly, I think that the strongest case for Kamara is in the full PPR settings, where you do feel pretty good about taking him as your RB2, because that's been how he's been so successful as a fantasy running back, is through the pass catching, because the rushing efficiency has fallen off a cliff. Like that, I think is pretty shot at this point. He's going to be 30 years old this season. And for me, the concern with Kamara comes down to, well, what's the upside here, right? What are we shooting for? And you kind of laid out the case where, are we really excited about the Saints offense with Tyler Shuck? I don't know if that's going to be Fitz's defense here. Is going to be like, I'm the Tyler Shuck believer. I think Shuck's going to be the guy, and maybe he can make me a believer as well, but I'm not convinced. And when you look at Kamara, the last 3 seasons, he's had 4 touchdowns, 6 touchdowns, and 8 touchdowns. 8 is what he had last year. But if he falls more into that 4 touchdown category, I don't know if he's going to be a top 20 running back. The last 2 seasons, you look at running backs who have scored 5 or fewer touchdowns, there have been 0 running backs under 5 touchdowns or at 5 that have been top 20 in half PPR. So you look at the Saints, they're 31st in projected points based on the Vegas win implied odds. They're tied with the New York Giants in terms of total touchdowns expected from this Saints offense. So I understand the play on Kamara as a floor. Hey, I really need an RB2. He fell in my draft. It's full PPR. Okay. Then I can make the case for that. But I'm not going into my draft being like, I got to get Alvin Kamara. Because at the end of the season, are you going to regret not drafting a Saints player? I don't think so. So I'm interested to hear what Fitz has to say about that.
I don't think there's going to be a lot of regrets from people saying, oh, I wish I had more Rashid Shaheed shares in 2025. I don't think that's going to happen. But Alvin Kamara is a little different story here. So Pat Fitzmaurice, clearly the Saints are not looking good. They are looking closer to having the number 1 overall pick in the draft than they are necessarily look like they're going to be a playoff team. I think that is for certain. However, Andrew does make some good arguments here about the possibility, the inefficiency of this offense, the quarterback play not being able to sustain what you would hope that they even had last year with the different quarterbacks that they use with Alvin Kamara. So your RB ranking is RB 13, which feels pretty good to me, Fitzy, but you do have to, here on Fantasy Court, justify your rankings. It's interesting because in between is where the ECR is at 16, you are at 13, Erickson's at 19, so ECR splitting the difference. Why are you actually ahead of ECR? Why should I buy into that narrative when looking at the 2025 version of Alvin Kamara, Pat?
Well, Your Honor, you mentioned that Kamara was RB10 last year, but he was actually RB6 in half-point PPR fantasy scoring per game, I believe, last year. I think he can continue to be a top 12 or at least a top 15 running back. And I know some people would contend that the inexperience of the Saints quarterbacks is a reason to fade Alvin Kamara in 2025. I would contend that the inexperience of Tyler Shuck and Spencer Rattler is a reason to like Alvin Kamara for 2025. These inexperienced quarterbacks are going to be very eager to check down to Kamara. If they don't see anything they like downfield a few seconds after the snap, and Alvin Kamara remains one of the very best pass-catching running backs in the league. I suspect that with young quarterbacks who simply won't be able to do a lot of business downfield, Kamara's pass-catching role is going to be as prominent as ever this season. He had more than 80 receptions in each of his first 4 seasons in the NFL. Hasn't had more than 75 in any of his last 4 seasons. I think he could get back over 80 catches this year. And while Kamara's never had a 1,000-yard rushing season, and while the prosecution contends that his rushing efficiency has collapsed, he had 950 rushing yards last year in just 14 games. He was pacing for his first 1,000-yard season. And since his second NFL season in 2018, Kamara's never averaged fewer than 53 rushing yards per game. By no means is he any sort of zero in the running game. Should he stay healthy this season, he should once again give you 800 or 900 yards rushing. So I think the RB3 ranking of Kamara is more than justified.
Yes, it's the all-purpose yards, the full-point PPR allure of Alvin Kamara, too. When you look at the number of receptions he's had here, I think that bump up to 68 is interesting. So we are going to, for now, shelve this debate, send it to you, our YouTube audience here, in a poll and let you decide. Are you for Andrew Erickson at RB19, Alvin Kamara, or Fitzy's RB13 ranking? So let's continue the deliberation here as we go. And realize, too, age does matter here. Let's keep talking it out. He is 30 years old, Pat. So does that bother you? Because at the end of the day, we do have those age concerns when it comes to running backs when they start to reach that magical peak of 30. I know Andrew Erickson, his productivity took a downturn when he turned 30 last year. It's been all downhill from there. But will it be the same for Alvin Kamara?
I hate to answer a question with a question, Your Honor, but are you fading Derrick Henry this year?
Oh,
Built
how
different.
dare you? I will find you in contempt. You dare how can we even discuss fading? You don't even say those words, fading Derrick Henry in my courtroom. You are out of line even for suggesting that. Look at him. Look at how beautiful he is. Look at, he's the perfect running back. Size, power, speed. Of course, this is his Tennessee Titans days. But look at Derrick Henry with his little braided ponytail out there. No, I am not fading him, but a very different physical human specimen. Andrew Erickson, I'll put the age requirement to you. 30 years old, Alvin Kamara, is that another thing that should be worrying us about him in 2025? Or, because he is the best guy they got, and they don't have a lot behind, under center, is it really just Alvin Kamara season for one more glorious year in 25?
I mean, I think the age matters from a point of efficiency, right? He can put up compiling stats if it is just, hey, he's just catching up a bunch of dump-off passes from the inexperienced quarterbacks that are under center. But that can only get you so far. I feel like that does cap the ceiling a little bit. That's why I think that he's a floor play in PPR. Like, he's an RB2 floor play because I don't think the ceiling is there based on his age and based on the ecosystem that I'm not excited about.
All right. The jury has deliberated. The jury has made a decision, and I will honor that decision. 60% of the audience broke a certain way, 40% broke the other, and the 60% majority rule in favor of drafting Alvin Kamara. You will be drafting Alvin Kamara in 2025. Pat Fitzmaurice wins this first battle here. And again, it's not all about battles. Sometimes it's also about having fun, and sometimes it's even about giving away free stuff. And we've got some amazing things here at Fantasy Pros. If you're watching on our YouTube channel, which I know you are, because I don't know how else you're watching this craziness, subscribe to the YouTube channel, drop your comments below on this or any of our videos, and you are instantly eligible to win this month's giveaway for July. It's the red Buffalo Bills James Cook autographed jersey, number 4 himself, from pristineauction.com. Now, how do you win? Let me reiterate once again, for those of you in the back who weren't listening, subscribe to the YouTube channel, like this video, drop your comments below, and that's it. And don't forget to ring the bell till it goes ding so you never miss a piece of content on the channel. Subscribe to Fantasy Pros because we're going to hit 300,000 this year with your help, and maybe you'll get a James Cook jersey just for hanging out with us and talking ball. All right, so round 1 goes to Pat Fitzmaurice here. It's good to see that Andrew Erickson's got some fight left in him, though. I'm pretty sure of that. Andrew Erickson, are you on location today, or is this the new place you're broadcasting from? What's happening here?
What do you mean on location?
Well, you know, like in My Cousin Vinny, the judge says, wear a suit to my courtroom. Pat Fitzmaurice has a lovely background. You're just, looks like you're, broadcasting from the jail cell today. Now, I did put you in contempt last time, but I thought I posted bail for you and you got out last time.
That is correct. I do appreciate that. I do appreciate the bail money. No, this is my new place. This is where I'm going to be. This is a new home base for me. I'm in the I've been banished to the basement, but the internet works down here because we got a 50-foot Ethernet cord, and it's working out great.
Please, nobody needs to know the size of your Ethernet cord. Let's take Alex's question here. Hi, pros. How do you feel about Noel? Shouldn't he be stepping into the Tank Dell role? Pat Fitzmaurice, Higgins, Kirk, Noel. A lot of new pieces joining Nico Collins. What do you think about Noel's fantasy value in 25?
I don't know if he's going to be able to beat out Christian Kirk. I like Jalen Noel as a prospect. I don't know if he's the odd man out when they go to a 3-receiver set. It's possible it's going to be Nico, Kirk, and Higgins.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I tend to agree. Erickson, is that 3 for 3 for you?
Yeah, I agree that's how it's going to open, but I just don't think Christian Kirk is built for the long game. I mean, he's been on injured reserve the last 2 seasons at the end of the year. So I think Noel is a really talented guy. I'm really shocked that he lasted till the 3rd round of the NFL draft. And again, a healthy Kirk is going to get hey, he's a veteran, he's experienced, we're going to put him in the starting lineup. But if Noel makes the most of his opportunities when he gets, whether it's spelling one of those other 3 guys at times, and he's making big plays, he may not even need an injury to take over that slot role in the second half of the season. So I like him long-term a lot, especially at the end of the year.
I find myself, this is not something I do normally, but because they're all cheap, I find myself getting multiple Texans wide receivers late in drafts. Kirk and Higgins and Noel and Kirk, just different combinations, because I do feel over time they will have different usage. Like I feel like Kirk for that first 6 weeks will be good, and then maybe Jaden Higgins for that last 6 weeks will be the guy that I want. Maybe, who knows what happens in between. Quick one here too from IO, who super chat us. We appreciate you. Who to go for in a 12-man league, 11-spot, half PPR? Half PPR, look, I would consider Genty and Derrick Henry and then the best wide receiver on the return, Andrew Erickson. What do you want to do in that half PPR at 11?
Drake London, Brian Thomas Jr., Ashton Genty. Those are kind of the guys I'm circling when I'm looking at picking at the turn. I like the running back receiver start the most because you can get, I think, contenders to finish both RB1 and wide receiver 1 when you're picking that late.
All right, Pat, you agree, disagree?
Sweet spot for wide receiver if you have to start 3 of them. If you only have to start 2 wide receivers every week, then I think you can introduce Christian McCaffrey, Derrick Henry, Ashton Genty into the mix.
All right, that's enough questions for now. Let's get back to why we're really here, which is fantasy court. So the next person we're going to debate is a running back who is now on the Cowboys and has got some company there, but I'm not always really sure if he's any good or the company around him is any good. He's the RB34 currently in the ECR, but Pat Fitzmaurice has him more aggressively at RB30. And Andrew Erickson, he does not care for him at RB37. His name is Javonte Williams. Get on the stand, Javonte. It's time to take you to court. Let's go. Javonte Williams, here we go. Andrew Erickson, make the case against the ECR and for your ranking of Javonte Williams, a backfield that's wide open, but you don't feel he can take advantage of that.
Well, I mean, he is my highest ranked Dallas Cowboys running back. So if you're making me pick someone that I think could fall into winning this backfield, it still would be Javonte. I guess I'm just less confident about that compared to ECR and compared to Fitz because I mean Javonte's just been terrible, right? He's been absolutely atrocious since that devastating knee injury that he suffered a couple years ago. And we're all hoping that, okay, maybe he can get back to it. And, he's 2 years now removed from it. He's still a relatively young running back at age 25. So you're thinking, okay, maybe there is a path where he can have a J.K. Dobbins type of resurgence in Dallas. And I do think that isn't within the range of outcomes, but I also think that Dallas is not necessarily prioritizing their running backs. I think that they really are taking it to heart of the running backs don't matter ever since they overpaid Ezekiel Elliott. And just every year they're thinking, okay, how can we just scrap together some type of run game with all these running back cast-offs? I mean, look, Javonte seems like he's in the driver's seat to be the RB1, but Miles Sanders has also been reported to be taking first-team reps, and, he looked decent enough in his last game with Carolina Panthers. Again, he looked still a lot better than Javonte did the entire season in Denver in that one game for the Carolina Panthers. So I don't think it's all but said in terms of who is the RB1 in this offense. I think that Dallas is still trying to figure that out. And if Javonte isn't back to his former self, then he's a wasted pick because he's not going to be able to do anything, I think, in this offense. Again, he'll start the year, operating in pass protection, catching passes out of the backfield. But I just don't want to be overly confident that, he is back to his form because he's saying that he feels a lot better. I like when he's cheap as an option. Like last year, J.K. Dobbins, he was going outside the top 40 running backs. And I was all over that because I thought that, okay, all of the injury downside is baked in here. But up at RB30, I mean, there's a lot of good players still in that range where they're a dual threat quarterback. I mean, Justin Fields is going in that range at RB30. There's a lot of breakout wide receivers in that range. So where I don't necessarily hate the bet on Javonte, the player, it's where he gets up in terms of pricing with all the injury risk baked in, or maybe not baked in as much, is where I get a little hesitant. So that's my take on Javonte.
Some interesting points there from Andrew Erickson. I like the fact that it's not just the fact that he's going late, it's also where he's going and who you're passing up to draft him. Now, Pat Fitzmaurice, it's also a very good year for rookie running backs. This rookie class we like a lot. That's another reason maybe why, perhaps the Javonte Williams investment isn't the best, because some of those young guys like Caleb Johnson floating around there late, Cam Scatteraboo floating around there late in a similar range. We also got some veterans there like Najee Harris in that grouping, as well as some upstart second-year guys like Tajay Spears. So there's a lot of guys in this RB range that might have a little bit more appeal. But regardless, you seem to turn your head, ignore this fact, Pat Fitzmaurice, and you're aggressively ranking, and I say aggressively because I'm the judge, I can say what I want, aggressively ranking Javonte Williams at RB30. So let's talk about it. What's that justification? I know Jaden Blue is not endearing himself to the coaching staff, but is that enough for Javonte Williams to just default, run away with this job?
At RB30, Javonte Williams may be the last lead back you can get in your draft. And I do think he is going to be the lead back. Javonte Williams has said he is just starting to feel 100% healthy after that devastating knee injury in 2022 when he tore his ACL and LCL. If he is fully healthy and successfully fends off all challengers in the Dallas backfield, it's possible Williams could dramatically outperform his low ADP of RB39. And let's look at that competition in the Dallas backfield. There is rookie Jaden Blue, who as you mentioned, Your Honor, has reportedly annoyed his new employers with his work habits that are said to be less than exemplary. There's Miles Sanders, who over the last 2 years has averaged 3.5 yards per carry and 4.3 yards per target, and has scored 4 touchdowns in 27 games. And there is late 7th-round pick Phil Maffa, who has 4.61 speed. And Javonte Williams has 99 catches over the last 2 seasons and has caught more than 40 passes in every season, except for the one where he wrecked his knee in week 4. And if Javonte Williams is fully healthy and goes back to being the same powerful tackle-breaking runner he was as a rookie in 2021, when fantasy managers across the land were clamoring for the Broncos to bench Melvin Gordon and give Javonte Williams more carries, well, then Javonte Williams is going to look like a bargain, even where I have him ranked as a mid-range RB3.
interesting points of view here on both sides. One pro Javonte, one anti Javonte. But you decide. That's the beauty of joining us live. You are the jury, so I'm going to put the Javonte Williams to draft or not to draft at that ADP that we're looking at. Again, Fitzy's got him ranked at RB 30, Erickson at 37, the ECR once again in between at 34. So are we drafting him or are we not drafting him? So you decide. The poll is up. Let's see what you got there, YouTube fam. In the meantime, let's continue to discuss Javonte Williams because Fitz, a lot of the arguments here, I feel like for you, are a matter of, have you seen the guys he's competing against? And that's fair. It's not great. But isn't there a world where none of these guys are great? Where they're all just kind of miserable and none of them really impact us in fantasy at all? Or do you think that somebody in this Dallas backfield just has to do it by default?
No, there is a scenario where none of these guys tops 500 rushing yards, and maybe we even see some Phil Maffa getting time. But that would depend on, I think for that to happen, Javonte Williams would have to be just a physically different guy now post-knee injury than he was before the knee injury. But if we leave open a window of optimism that he could be back to where he was when he came into the league as a rookie and was routinely taking tacklers for free pony rides on his back, then I think he runs away with the job.
Pony rides are fun. There's no denying that. Andrew Erickson, Derek Brown makes a point, and rarely does this happen, but he's made a point here, which is that last year J.K. Dobbins was a guy drafted as an RB3 who became an RB2. Could that same path be forward for Javonte Williams, considering he is more removed from the knee surgery that really concerns you, which is valid, granted, but we also know the further we get removed from some of these knee surgeries, the better the performance is from some of these running backs. Does that enter into your psyche at all, my friend?
I think so. I mean, I think that the comp to J.K. Dobbins is a solid one, but I think Dobbins was going even later. I mean, a lot of people did not want to drop Dobbins at all because he had just missed so many games. At least Javonte's been playing. Just it seems like he's not really been at 100% in terms of him feeling like himself after the devastating injury. But at the same time, there's a laundry list of running backs that were never the same. Again, like you said, when they suffer these devastating knee injuries and they never get back that explosiveness, that juice, that tackle breaking ability that we were so high on earlier in their careers. And I think the thing with Javonte too is he's always been a committee back, dating back to his North Carolina college days, right? Where he was putting time, I believe it was with Michael Carter. So in the NFL, it was Melvin Gordon. He was in a timeshare with. So even in Dallas, if it is Javonte as the 1A, is there someone else that's still involved? I mean, Jaden Blue, again, not a workhorse back by any means, but someone that can still make plays in the passing game out of the backfield, catching passes. Okay, he has a lot of juice. So is he more of a complement to Javonte? Again, it's really about carving out those high-value opportunities. So if Javonte's working on passing down, which makes sense, that's something that he did in Denver, and who is the red zone back? I think that's really the key. The thing with Javonte with me is if he was going higher, let's say he was like a top 24 running back. Let's say we were more confident of him being the RB1. Wouldn't he also look exactly like a dead zone running back where we're vaulting him up the rankings because of projected volume, even though he's been really inefficient? And the argument is, well, there's no one else to take away touches. And what always happens? Oh, they always find a way to get someone else touches in that backfield. So that's just why I try to be a little more price sensitive to Javonte, just because there's a really risky floor here if he gets too expensive.
The jury has returned from being sequestered, and they have an answer on the Javonte Williams question. Guilty or not guilty, draft or not to draft? That is the question, and 59% are in favor of drafting Javonte Williams at his current ADP. Perhaps he is a red zone back of worth. Perhaps he's a dead zone back, but he's a dead zone back going later than the other dead zone running back, so the verdict is in. Javonte Williams will be drafted this year in 2025. I don't know about me. I'm with you, Andrew Erickson, off the record, but I have to go along with the people, unfortunately. The people run this joint around here, at least for today. At least for today. All right, continue to drop your comments below. We love hearing from you on these debates. We want to keep the debate going, keep the conversation going, and YouTube is not the only place for us. Nana! We've got other places where we go and we talk football, including our Twitch. So go over to twitch.com/fantasypros, subscribe there, use your Amazon Prime account to subscribe, right? $5. Gets rid of all those nasty commercials. You can follow us on there, but I'm telling you, subscribe. That's the way to do it. That way you can watch commercial free. I hate commercials unless I'm on it, in which case they're the best commercials ever. But look, Mondays at 4, Tuesdays and Wednesdays at 2, and then Thursdays and Fridays at 5. We are taking your questions. We are talking to you because we are the People's Show. So it's not just YouTube, it's also Twitch. It's another great way to interact with us, get your questions answered, and hang out and talk football this season. Again, twitch.com/fantasypros. That's the place to be. Twitch.tv, /fantasypros. Sorry, there's a lot of things to remember here. And this wig is hot. It's very hot, extremely uncomfortable. It's July, and I'm wearing this wig because I'm an artist at the end of the day. That's why, because this is my art, and this is what I do for you, the people. All right, let us continue to help the people here and switch gears. No more running backs. I'm sick and tired of that. Judge Joey wants to talk about a wide receiver, and not just any wide receiver. I want to talk about a sexy wide receiver. I want to talk about a guy who was going potentially number 1 overall last year, but not this year. It was a disappointing year for Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill actually was in my courtroom for other reasons at different times, but today he is here for one reason only, because we're trying to decide whether or not to draft him. Now, the consensus ranking of Tyreek Hill is wide receiver 14. Pat Fitzmaurice is pretty close to that, wide receiver 16. Then all the way somewhere, I don't know, in the southern district of New York somewhere, very far from New Jersey here, is Andrew Erickson's ranking of wide receiver 23. 23! That's pretty low here for Tyreek Hill, a guy who has won people many a fantasy league now. I understand. He's 31 years old. I understand last year there were some disappointments. I understand the Dolphins are falling apart at the seams, potentially. He had 81 catches, 959 yards, just 6 touches. He's only a year removed from back-to-back 1,700-yard seasons with 20 combined touchdowns over that period. So, a lot of fantasy productivity. Down years happen. He has been a top 6 wide receiver since the 2020 season. So, Andrew Erickson, why are we so aggressively negative on Tyreek Hill in 2025? Make your case. Tyreek Hill is on the stand.
Well, I think the first thing with Tyreek Hill, as you pointed out about last year being a down year, and I know that we can point a lot of that to his quarterback not being available for a lot of that season, but even when Tua was healthy last year, Tyreek Hill was the wide receiver 18 in terms of points per game. You saw his yards per route run plummeted nearly half. It was down to 1.75. And I think the most glaring thing for me when it comes to Tyreek Hill is yards after the catch. He posted one of his worst metrics in terms of yards after the catch per reception last year, and that has nothing to do with the quarterback. The quarterback did his job. He got the ball to Tyreek Hill, and it's Tyreek Hill's job to then make guys miss and create yards after the catch, which he's always done throughout his NFL career, but not last season. Because I think that's a clear red flag of, hey, this is a older player. He's going to be 31, who's relied on speed to get separation, and you're starting to see it kind of dwindle. Guys don't get better as they get older, especially at the receiver position. We see this all the time. I think that Tyreek Hill is past his prime, and that's why I have him ranked so lowly, because I don't believe that it's going to just get bounced back and get better. We're just going to turn back the clock, because that hasn't really happened with a lot of these receivers, especially the ones that are the same archetype as Tyreek Hill that are more reliant on that speed. So I'm much more bullish on Jalen Waddle being the more focal point of this offense. He is younger. He's only 26. And I think that he's also shown an elite ceiling attached to Tua Tagovailoa and Mike McDaniel in this Miami Dolphins offense. So, and then you layer in the outburst in week 18, where, I mean, he quit on his team. So how committed is he actually to the Miami Dolphins if they start 0-2? Is he going to be on the sidelines again complaining? So that's another factor that's not even necessarily football related, but off the field. Like, how dedicated is he to this team and this season? I know that a lot of things I've been reading about this year, specifically with Waddle versus Hill, like Waddle's taken on a bigger leadership role in this offense this year. So I'm expecting him to really step up and be a big part along with Devon Achane, whereas Tyreek Hill maybe isn't as emphasized nearly as much. And even when you look at some of that, ESPN released their report of they poll all of these anonymous scouts and executives about who are the top receivers in the game. And Tyreek Hill ranked number 3rd in that list. So I thought that was kind of interesting. But then when you read the profile, it's, Yeah, because of all the attention that he grabs from defenses, not the fact that he is the offensive player that people are afraid of. It's, yes, he commands attention from defenses, but it's allowing other players in the offense to get open and to be productive. Like we saw last year when the two most productive players on the Dolphins were Jonnu Smith and Devon Achane. So for those reasons, especially where Tyreek Hill's going, so I'm going to take Tyreek Hill over Garrett Wilson, who just got paid to be one of the, as one of the best receivers in the NFL. George Kittle, again, also older, but he plays tight end and was coming off leading the NFL in points per game at tight end. Or Devontae Adams, again, another older receiver, but he's shown no signs of decline last season. Like, I'm going to take all those guys over Tyreek Hill, so I can't get on the price of that high-end wide receiver 2, low-end wide receiver 1 for Tyreek Hill.
Now, one thing that does get better with age, Pat Fitzmaurice. Definitely one of those things. Now, Pat Fitzmaurice, let's talk about it here. Let's talk about Tyreek Hill, because Andrew Erickson is suggesting not only is he not Garrett Wilson or Devontae Adams range worthy, but he is more Zay Flowers worthy by his ranking. And now that is a tough road for me to drive down in the middle of the night with no headlights. I can't see already. I have to wear glasses at night. It's a very difficult thing to find Tyreek Hill in that range. He's never going to go in that range realistically. We all know that because he's a bigger name guy. The question is, are his better days behind him? You say not so fast. Let's tell everybody why you should still consider Tyreek Hill.
Your Honor, Tyreek Hill had back-to-back 119 catch, 1,700-yard seasons in 2022 and 2023. Last year, in a bad season, and I would ask the court stenographer to let the record show that I'm using
Let the record show. Air quotes were used. Thank you. You may proceed. The record is shown.
In this bad season, Tyreek Hill still had 81 catches for 959 yards and 6 touchdowns. There were undeniable headwinds for Tyreek. He dealt with a wrist injury. He lost starting quarterback Tua Tagovailoa to a concussion, and the Miami offense completely ran aground in the several games that Tua missed. And upon Tua's return, the Dolphins went to a short passing attack to protect their quarterback and to minimize what they were asking from a bad offensive line. And yet, despite all of these headwinds, Hill still provided us with wide receiver 2 numbers. Now tight end Jonnu Smith is gone, which should further consolidate targets in the Miami offense amongst Hill, Jalen Waddle, Devon Achane. Jonnu had 88 catches last year. Tua averaged a career low 5.7 intended air yards per attempt last season. In 2023, he was at 7.7 intended air yards per attempt. In 2022, he was at 9.5. One would have to imagine that Dolphins head coach Mike McDaniel will try to restore the principle of verticality in on the Miami passing game this year. Tyreek Hill recently ran the 100-yard dash in just a hair over 10 seconds flat. He is still blazing fast. He's still the cheetah. He is by no means washed up at age 31, as the prosecution would try to have you believe. And, Your Honor, let the record show that the defense is still below consensus with its wide receiver 16 ranking for Mr. Hill. The prosecution's ranking for Mr. Hill is, to use a complex legal phrase, cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs.
All right. I will allow that language in the courtroom just this one time, because I know it took a lot for you with your Midwestern sensibilities to use that sort of language in my courtroom. So I will allow it. But you're on thin ice, Fitzmaurice. Watch your ass. All right. Just be careful what comes out of your mouth next. So we are going to put it to you, the jury. Now, keep in mind, the current ADP is where neither of these two bozos are. We're looking at wide receiver 14 for Tyreek Hill. However, Fitzy's got him at 16, just below that. Andrew Erickson saying he is closer to a wide receiver 3 with his ranking at wide receiver 23. We're talking about the range of Devonta Smith, Zay Flowers, Jameson Williams for the once great Tyreek Hill. Could he be great again? We're going to put that to you, the jury. Vote right now. We want to hear from you. And yes, Fitz is slaying it, but I'm telling you, the naughty words, be careful. Be careful. Andrew Erickson, do you think this is, as you continue to listen to some of these other arguments here, is there any wiggle room for you to change any opinion of Tyreek Hill, or you don't see him as potentially a league winner at the discount you're getting him? Because he's only 1 year removed from being the wide receiver 1 overall. I think that's something that everybody needs to recall. Whether or not you think he's a player that can repeat wide receiver 1 overall It's another thing to go and make him from the number one wide receiver overall to not even being a wide receiver 1 to almost being a wide receiver 3. Is that too much of a precipitous fall in your rankings?
I mean, I don't think so. I think that when you look at Tyreek Hill, weren't we talking about, maybe it was on one of the shows on the betting side of things, but what if Tyreek Hill gets traded? I mean, that seemed like it was a legitimate possibility. And what happens to his fantasy value then? Maybe it's a good place that he goes to. Maybe he goes back to Kansas City. You know, they don't have Rashee Rice. He gets suspended. So how does that play a factor in it? Because when you're trying to capture the range of outcomes for Tyreek Hill, yeah, I understand if he just shows exactly what he did a couple of years ago, yes, you're getting him at a discount. But what if things just totally bottom out? I mean, this has happened before with some of these older receivers. Cooper Kupp, everything was great. He was unstoppable, and then it wasn't because he got banged up, and he showed signs of decline. Michael Thomas, same thing. So that's where I get concerned where, yeah, you look at what they've done and you think, man, I'm ranking this player too low, and maybe I could move Tyreek Hill up a little bit. But my ranking is just suggesting to those that follow my ranks that I don't want you to draft Tyreek Hill. I would rather you wait and just draft Jalen Waddle. I think that he's a way better value. So you talk about Hill as a value. Yeah, he's discounted from last year, but I still think there's the floor I don't think is existent. I think it's a really fragile floor with Tyreek Hill because if he falls out of favor with this Dolphins offense, what does that look like? What happens then? And that's where I get scary about making the investment of Tyreek Hill, who still costs what? You're still drafting him in round 2 or round 3. That's still a lot of draft capital.
Pat, there's not a lot of landing spots for a trade for Tyreek Hill if that were to happen. Arizona Cardinals perhaps could be one, unless you want to get traded to the Tennessee Titans going to make a big move for a wide receiver. I don't really see that happening. Jacksonville already filled their wide receiver gap there. You know, the Raiders could always add a bad boy, and that's typically what the Raiders like to do. And Pete Carroll is not getting any younger if he wants to go ahead and win one more Super Bowl. Is there a spot where you could see Tyreek Hill landing in a trade, perhaps before the season begins? Unlikely, but possible. And what would that possibly do to his draft value, Pat?
You would think that whoever dealt for Tyreek Hill would have to be a team that felt the Super Bowl was within reach. And I don't know if any of the teams you mentioned quite fit that category, but we are getting into training camp now. We're going to see injuries happen on almost a daily basis. I think it would be some sort of contending team that perhaps lost a top wide receiver to an injury in training camp.
All right. The jury has returned and the verdict is in. It's a close one, the closest we've had yet. I can't believe this. Just 55% are in favor of drafting Tyreek Hill. We are drafting Tyreek Hill. Case is dismissed here. Go ahead, draft Tyreek Hill. Look, I got to say I'm drafting Tyreek Hill. I took him in our latest mock draft with my third round pick, and I have him and Chase on that team. Now, theoretically, if Tyreek Hill isn't any good, well, okay, it's going to hurt me, but I still got Chase. I can't pass him up in the third round. I just can't do it. Andrew, there's a lot of problems there when it comes to Tyreek Hill. There's no doubt about that. On the field, off the field, age-wise, speed-wise, all the things are problems. But I'm just not ready to banish him to the phantom zone either. I'm not ready to just eat Cocoa Puffs either. It says Pat Fitzmaurice put out there behind us. Oh, we are going to continue our discussions here with more wide receivers. Before we do, a quick reminder, don't mock draft. Don't draft on your own. Be there with us for all of it. And here's how you do it. The draft assistant. That's what you're going to use here. The draft assistant with us here at fantasypros.com/assistant. That's the place to go. All you got to do is just sync your leagues for free over at Fantasy Pros. Download the app. That's what you do. It'll give you live pick suggestions during your draft. It'll tell you who you should take, who's been taken before, what the recommendations are. If the team behind you already has a quarterback, it'll say, don't take a quarterback. You can wait another round. All of those insights, all the cheat sheets, all the intel, everything at your fingertips at one time. There's no failing here, okay? It's all about success. It's all about dominating your draft and embarrassing your friends and relatives in your fantasy football league. So let us help you do just that by syncing your leagues for free at Fantasy Pros. Download the app today. Wherever you get your apps, go to fantasypros.com/assistant. That's the place where we can help you on draft day outkick everybody right in the you-know-what. That way you are the fantasy championship at the end of the day. That's what we want you to be, the champion. Let's get to another name on our list here at Fantasy Court. The next name is in a new spot with a new quarterback and a new offense. What could go wrong for one DK Metcalf? Let's bring him into the courtroom and have him take a seat. DK Metcalf, physical specimen, yes, of course. DK Metcalf is now on the Pittsburgh Steelers, playing with Aaron Rodgers and Arthur Smith offense. Boy, oh boy, settle down, everybody. I know all those things sound really exciting when you put them all together. But DK Metcalf is still just 27 years old. DK Metcalf has had a strong career. Back-to-back years, though, just 66 receptions. He's hovering around 1,000 yards, a combined 13 touchdowns receiving over the last 2 years, just 5 last year. But things weren't great necessarily in Seattle last season, so perhaps we give him a pass. The previous 2 years, he finished as wide receiver 16, wide receiver 18. The 2 years before that, wide receiver 12 and wide receiver 7. So he's going backwards in these rankings. And as you can tell right now from our FantasyPros expert consensus rankings right now, DK Metcalf is wide receiver 22. For Pat Fitzmaurice, he's right around there at wide receiver 20. But Andrew Erickson, once again, not having it. Wide receiver 29, Andrew Erickson. It's time to step up the game and talk about DK Metcalf. It's time to bring Metcalf to justice. Let the debates begin.
DK Metcalf, in my opinion, is overrated. I think that the physical specimen.
Say it to his face with those biceps.
No,
I dare you. I dare you.
Please don't anybody send him this link of
okay.
me thinking he's over. And it's really just for fantasy. I think that he's actually a real life good NFL wide receiver. But when it comes to fantasy production, Joe, you talked about it, how things have gone in the complete opposite direction for DK Metcalf. After starting his career on fire, it's really not gotten better. And looking back, so many debates we've had about drafting DK Metcalf. Should we draft him in round 3 and round 2? And then at the end of the season, him and Tyler Lockett end up scoring the same amount of points, and Tyler Lockett was 3 or 4 rounds cheaper every single year. So let's fast forward to the current situation in Pittsburgh with Arthur Smith, everybody's favorite offensive mind for fantasy football purposes. We all love him. When you look at the number 1 wide receiver in Arthur Smith offenses, you don't ever have to have this guy on your fantasy team. I look back the 6 years that he's either been a head coach or an OC. One receiver has been inside the top 25 in points per game as the number 1 option on an Arthur Smith offense. And it was A.J. Brown in 2020 when Ryan Tannehill threw 33 touchdowns and 7 interceptions. A.J. Brown was the wide receiver 5 in points per game. But every other season, the receiver, the top option on an Arthur Smith offense, has not cracked the top 25. And most of the time, they haven't cracked the top 36 in terms of points per game for the wide receiver position. Now, Metcalf specifically, last 3 seasons, outside the top 15 overall wide receivers. Last year, he was wide receiver 33 in points per game. And that was playing in this up-tempo, Ryan Grubb, pass-heavy offense. That's not the situation in Pittsburgh. It's the complete opposite. Pittsburgh, with Aaron Rodgers at quarterback, what do we know? They're going to run sluggish. They're going to be a slow-paced offense because Rodgers loves to run the play clock down. They're going to want to run the football, like we've seen with Arthur Smith traditionally in all of his offenses. That's why they went out and drafted Caleb Johnson. So for those reasons, I feel no need to draft DK Metcalf because, yes, I get that he understands the projects as the number 1 receiver, and he's this big, exciting receiver who can catch touchdowns and make big plays, but he's going to be so inconsistent. You're going to be pulling your hair out every single week because I don't think that the actual sheer volume is going to be that massive, even if his target share and percentages of the offense are large. And I think what's also being undersold, we talked about this guy earlier. I think Fitz said he had 88 catches last year. Jonnu Smith. Arthur Smith offenses have heavily featured the tight end. If you look at those 6 offenses I mentioned before, here are the target shares to the tight ends. 8th, 1st, 5th, 3rd, 4th, and 8th overall in the league that particular season. They have 2 decent tight ends between Jonnu Smith and Pat Freiermuth. I don't think either of those guys are scrubs. They can both command targets. They can both command red zone opportunities. So Metcalf showed in Seattle that, yes, he was the alpha, but it was really more of a 1A, 1B. You know, Lockett was always involved. And last year, JSN had his breakout, and Metcalf was still there. I know he missed some time because of injuries, but he never really just clearly established himself as, I'm the only one that earns targets in this offense. So for those reasons, I'm out on DK Metcalf.
Pat Fitzmaurice, it's been brought to the attention of the court here. Andrew Erickson has brought some stats that I'm going to look at and review again, because what Andrew Erickson is saying is that Arthur Smith and fantasy wide receivers, basically, that's a big no-no. And he's got the data here to prove it. This is some damning evidence potentially here, incriminating DK Metcalf and Arthur Smith. And not to mention now Jonnu Smith. Another Smith has been brought into this offense, and we have seen some prior leans towards Jonnu and Arthur Smith offenses. So this is a tough situation you're in here, Pat Fitzmaurice. Your back's up against the wall here for wide receiver 20. Defend DK Metcalf. Pat?
Your Honor, let me start by saying I find it outrageous that Mr. Erickson is trying to put Arthur Smith on trial for the murder of Drake London's statistics in his first 2 years in the league, while Marcus Mariota and Desmond Ridder and Taylor Heineke walk around as free men. Is the prosecution really going to suggest that Aaron Rodgers, one of the 4 or 5 greatest pure passers in NFL history, is going to have the same sort of trouble delivering passes to his number one receiver?
Objection. Andrew, you should have objected to that Aaron Rodgers comment. That is not necessarily fact-based. That is opinion-based. That's what Pat Fitzmaurice. I will let the objection that I created stand. You may continue, but be careful about what you say around Aaron Rodgers around this court, my friend. That is
all right.
Purely circumstantial and opinion-based Aaron Rodgers analysis. But continue, Pat Fitzmaurice.
I realize His Honor is a big Johnny Unitas fan, so I retract my parade.
Love the Johnny U. Also, we have to take with a grain of salt Mr. Packer, Mr. Cheesehead, giving us his Aaron Rodgers glazing here on the program. But we will return to the DK Metcalf. Let's stick to DK here and Aaron Rodgers. You may continue. Be careful what comes next, Pat.
I do think it's fair to suggest that Aaron Rodgers will not have the same sort of issues delivering passes to his number one receiver that Marcus Mariota and Desmond Ridder did. And I know Aaron Rodgers at 41 is not quite what he was in his prime, but I think Aaron Rodgers at 71 will be a better passer than either Marcus Mariota or Desmond Ridder. Enough of old Falcons history, though. DK Metcalf has averaged 73 catches, 1,054 yards, and 8 touchdowns a year over 6 seasons in Seattle. He's been extremely durable. DK Metcalf will be the unquestioned number one receiver in Pittsburgh, which doesn't appear to have another good wide receiver on the roster. And Aaron Rodgers managed to make not one, but 2 wide receivers, Devontae Adams and Garrett Wilson, weekly must-starts for fantasy last year. DK Metcalf will be a must-start player this year, as he has been for the entirety of his career.
All right. There you have it, everybody. DK Metcalf, the pros, the cons, now the vote. It's up to you, the jury here. The poll is now up. Are you drafting DK Metcalf and giving Andrew Erickson a win here or no? I don't know. Are we against drafting DK Metcalf? This one's going to be close. I could feel it. I could smell it. Let's talk about that one glaring obvious thing. I think it was what Charlie that brought it up in the chat here, Andrew, which is Aaron Rodgers does have tunnel vision historically for a guy. And pretty much DK is the guy and the only guy here that you can really justify getting that kind of attention. Do you think that alone is enough to propel him past a mediocre 2024 campaign into a better 2025 performance?
No, I don't. I just think that, yes, even if Metcalf is the number one target, I'm looking at it from what's the actual sheer volume? Like, what does that actually mean? And that's what I was trying to capture looking at the Arthur Smith offenses, not necessarily the efficiency, which agreed, Rodgers is going to be more efficient than those other quarterbacks were. But what's the upside case if Metcalf is really around, because he's the number one, he gets 8 targets a game? Is that enough for him to be, he's locked and loaded top 24 wide receiver? Maybe. Maybe in the weeks he scores touchdowns, it's good. But what about in games where the Steelers are playing bully ball and they're feeding Caleb Johnson 20, 25 carries? What's going to happen then with Metcalf? Probably not that much. And I get that the receivers are bad, but what if those 2 tight ends were just receivers instead? I think those 2 tight ends are going to both command targets in this offense just based on what Arthur Smith does. They traded for Jonnu Smith. He's going to be involved in some capacity, especially underneath. You think Rodgers is going to want to wait and drop back and wait for DK Metcalf to get open downfield? He's 41. He doesn't want to take hits. He's going to get the ball out to Jonnu Smith just like they did in Miami.
Pat Fitzmaurice, Aaron Rodgers, who some might say in this courtroom, and by some I mean people wearing Brewers hats, some might say that Aaron Rodgers can save DK Metcalf's fantasy season, but let the record show a QBR 41 in 2022 with the Packers, a quarterback in decline, coming off his first year in many where he didn't reach 4,000 yards passing. Then the injury, the Achilles in 2023. Now age 41 with the New York Jets last year, again under 4,000 yards passing, and a QBR of 48, passer rating of 90. That's fine and dandy, but again, certainly the statistics are saying and suggesting that Aaron Rodgers, also a player who is way past his prime. Do you really think that just because DK's the lone guy, that Aaron Rodgers is good enough at this stage of his career to really make DK Metcalf a guy worth drafting?
I do think he will be. And you look at it over the years, and what is the favorite pass Aaron Rodgers likes to throw over the years? He has destroyed defenses on that back shoulder sideline throw. He did it with Jordy Nelson. He did it with Devontae Adams. I think he's going to do it with DK Metcalf, who is, with his physical stature, very well equipped to be right up there with Jordy and Devontae as great catchers of the back shoulder fade.
All right, I've been told the jury is in and we have a decision, and I have to say it's shocking. This is a shocking decision here. It's a 62% decision here. I thought this one would be much closer. I thought this would be a 51-49 scenario. I don't think it's going to be a happy day in the Andrew Erickson house, because yet again, he has lost this debate. 62% in favor of drafting DK Metcalf. This court is ruling in favor of drafting DK Metcalf based on the people. Andrew Erickson, perhaps the basement is where you should be, which is where your wife has now relegated your office to in your new home. So hopefully you can pull out this last one. You've got one player left to debate. Let's see how it goes here. Before we get there, keep the conversation going on our Discord, fantasypros.com/chat. Look how happy I am when I'm talking about Discord. Look at me. Oh, Discord is so much fun. Oh my God. fantasypros.com/chat. It's the place to be for mock drafting with a million of our most amazing people in our community. If you want to get your mock draft on, if you want to join a league, if you want to just talk ball, need some help on the waiver wire, need some help making a trade, our Discord community is there. This is what Fantasy Pros is all about. We are the people's show. This is the people's court, and our Discord is one of the great ways to get in touch with us. Plus, you can also hang out with us on shows that we record on Discord during the season and even preseason. So join. We want you there. Hang out with us. Be part of our community at fantasypros.com/chat. Join our Discord today. The final player to debate. We've come full circle here in this courtroom today. Back to another guy on the New Orleans Saints. Chris Olave, a player with great talent, but also great risk. Some concussion issues last year really, unfortunately, derailed his season. Fitz has him at wide receiver 32. Erickson has him at wide receiver 42. 31 is actually where the ECR lies. So neither of you guys like him as much as the consensus. Pat, clearly you're closer to the consensus. Andrew Erickson, you are further away from the consensus. Now, I will tell you, Andrew, I've set you up for success on this one, because I am where you are, but again, I don't decide. The people decide here, watching us on YouTube. Subscribe to the channel. And those are the people, ultimately, who will decide the fate of to draft or not to draft Chris Olave. Court is in session. Let's hear your arguments against drafting Chris Olave, Andrew Erickson.
Well, if we're already drafting Alvin Kamara, I don't know if I could stomach having two Saints on the same team.
Fair enough. That's a good start.
So that's how that's my opening statement. I just cannot co-sign having two Saints, maybe one Saint, but not two Saints on the same fantasy football team. Now, my issue with Olave last year, again, not great. Wide receiver 40 in points per game, and that was in his 6 full games, because I know he missed a bunch of games where he got knocked out early. The issue I have with Olave is the weekly ceiling appeal with him, because when you look at his body of work, you point to, yes, he's excellent in terms of yards per route run. I think that showcases how talented he is as a route runner. But the issue I have is he really hasn't shown a weekly ceiling. Last year, he was being outproduced by Rashid Shaheed. Rashid Shaheed was like on his way to this full-fledged breakout until he got injured. But you look at the targets, the air yards. Shaheed was running circles around Chris Olave. He also posted more top 12 weekly finishes. And that's my main point with Olave. The last 2 seasons, Rashid Shaheed has more top 12 weekly finishes. Olave, over his career, has averaged fewer than 2 top 12 finishes per season. So when you put him in your lineup, he is a floor play at best. He is not hitting your lineup and giving you league or week winning type of potential. And when you look at him in the context of this offense, where is that going to happen? Unless Tyler Shuck just dramatically outperforms where he was drafted as a second-round pick, which traditionally and historically has not been a high hit rate for quarterbacks in any capacity, I don't see the upside case to go after Olave. So, yeah, there's a scenario where he can, quote-unquote, now I'm using air quotes again, let everyone, Joe.
Please let the record show once again that the lawyer is using air quotes. Okay, you may proceed, Andrew Erickson. It's been noted.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
You're welcome. Honor. Don't kiss my rear end, okay? It's not going to get you any further in my courtroom. Just putting that out there. Continue.
I don't see the upside case from a weekly perspective with Olave. And when you look at just the last 24 games that Olave has played alongside Rashid Shaheed, Shaheed has averaged 56.5 receiving yards per game compared to Olave's 64. That's a difference of 8 receiving yards per game. So I understand trying to find value with the Saints offense with some of these guys that are all discounted across the board in case Shuck is better than expected and it's not this bottom feeder offense. But I want to get that at the cheapest price that I can get. And that's with Shaheed, who's going as wide receiver 55, despite the fact he was outproducing Chris Olave last season. And the last point I'll make before going over to Fitz, Olave, the thing with his game that I don't think is going to translate well with Shuck or any bad quarterback play is he doesn't make yards after the catch. And I don't know if that's to do with the issues he has staying healthy with concussions, but he's more of a traditional, I catch the ball, I make great plays, and then I fall down. So if he's not adding extra yards after the catch, he's more now reliant on the quarterback play being above average, which I'm very skeptical is going to be the case with Tyler Shuck. So yeah, that's why I'm not really in on Olave.
All right, fair enough. I will say this. I don't expect that quarterback play to be average. I think below average would be kind, potentially, for the quarterback play this year. Pat Fitzmaurice, it's a pretty good argument that Andrew Erickson has laid out against Chris Olave. I think you have to work uphill here. So let me put that backpack on you, and let's see if you can make that climb to getting the people on board with drafting Chris Olave this season.
Well, I think Erickson, in part, made my case for me when he mentioned Chris Olave's outstanding yards per route run figures over his career. In fact, his career yards per route run is 2.21 yards. That's just 10th of a percentage point behind Jamar Chase and CeeDee Lamb in the category of career yards per route run. So he has pedigree as an elite wide receiver to some degree. And Chris Olave was being drafted late in the second round or early in the third round of 2023 and 2024 fantasy drafts. Now let's frame this debate for what it is. We're talking about whether to draft him as a 7th rounder. And I would contend that despite some of the risks, which I acknowledge, there is the concussion risk, although I would remind the court that if Mr. Olave were to miss time with a concussion, his fantasy managers are entitled to put a bench player or a waiver wire acquisition into Olave's lineup spot as opposed to taking a 0 for that spot while Mr. Olave recovers. And I know there are concerns about the offense for the Saints and the quarterback situation. Even the worst offenses in the NFL generate 3,000 passing yards per season at minimum, although I regret to note in front of this particular judge and prosecuting attorney that the New England Patriots fell 6 yards short of 3,000 passing yards in 2024.
Please, no mentions of how bad the Patriots were in previous seasons. It hurts my feelings at Andrew Erickson's. Please proceed.
So, Chris Olave, lean into that.
You're out of order, Fitzmaurice. I'm just telling you. You're way out of order at that one.
Yes. Lean into the yards per route run and how Chris Olave has shown us he's an elite route runner with excellent speed. And while there are some headwinds for him, I find a 7th round price very reasonable for a wide receiver of his caliber.
All right. I want to put this to the jury, but I want the jury to hear this and listen to these instructions very carefully. Chris Olave is in the ECR going right around George Pickens, who plays with Dak Prescott, Travis Hunter, who plays with Trevor Lawrence, Chris Godwin, who plays with Baker Mayfield. Heck, even Jerry Jeudy, I think his quarterback situation, although he has 5,000 of them, I think all of them are better than what they have in New Orleans. So please keep that in mind when deliberating here, this final Chris Olave. The jury may now deliberate. In the meantime, we are going to ask you to like this video because you're hanging out with us and you're watching. Almost 300 of you live here. It's really fun. We appreciate you being with us. Subscribe to Fantasy Pros. We're trying to get to 300,000 subscribers this year. We could do it with your help. Drop your comments below and you might win yourself that James Cook jersey from Pristine Auction. There it is. Don't forget, Pristine Auction. Drop your comments below. Subscribe to the channel. Ring the bell till it goes ding. Do all those things and like this video. And guess what? That bad boy can be yours. That's a pretty snazzy looking jersey. All right. We are waiting for the results to come in here. Andrew Erickson, are you confident that this time around, finally, the people have heard your argument?
Maybe. I'm not sure. Maybe I'll get a pity vote on this because they don't want to see me go. But then again, I think they may want to see Fitz go 5-0 and just complete the sweep. Should I get my broom now? I got one.
Pat Fitzmaurice, are you prepared for the clean sweep potentially of Andrew Erickson in this courtroom today? I got to say, I did not see the DK one coming here on this last one.
Yeah, I'm prepared to go 5-0, and being a humble defense attorney, I will not make any Lionel Hutz jokes in reference to Erickson.
There you go. What could go wrong when Lionel Hutz is there? The jury is in. We have a verdict, and this one is our biggest yet. 74% have gone one way. This time, they have gone with the prosecution. They are not drafting Chris Olave, and neither am I. Case dismissed. Get out of here, Chris Olave. Not this season. We wish him all the health, all the best, but that New Orleans quarterback situation, even a great lawyer like you, Pat Fitzmaurice, I mean, when your argument is, well, there's guys on the waiver wire on your bench, that's a losing argument. You lost me right there. That's when I was done. You didn't have enough there. But you did go 4-1 over Andrew Erickson today on the fantasy football draft court.
Don't bury the lead. He did.
Join us. I'm not burying the lead. Hey, better to leave on a high note, Andrew Erickson. That's what I always say. And you could join us next week, same time, same station, Fantasy Pros Draft Court, Tuesday, 3 p.m. Eastern. Don't forget, subscribe to the channel, ring the bell, and then you get that little alert. Bing, bing. Look, oh, Fantasy Draft Court. I'm going to watch that because Joe's wearing a wig and they're giving out good fantasy football advice, and that's why we want you to be with us here on the channel. So that'll do it for us today, but the story of the game goes on for our two attorneys, Andrew Erickson and Pat Fitzmaurice. I want to thank all of our people here on the jury today as well. I am Judge Joey. This courtroom is now adjourned. Enjoy the rest of your day, everybody. Oh, this wig, I'll tell you, they're not paying me enough to wear this wig. It's so hot.
I'm 2-8 on fantasy court.
Oh no!
Yes, you're gonna need some help there.
Actually, there's an asterisk because I